Hi all, my name is Ryan and welcome to my channel What the Pop, where we discuss pop culture in general and Buffy a lot. The usual spoiler alert. I may talk about things in these analyses that relate to future plot points, so if you haven't seen all of Buffy at least once and don't like spoilers, I suggest you like the channel, then come back once you have seen it all. Today we continue our look at Season 2 with my review and analysis of Episode 21, Becoming Part 1. Well, the last one was short because it sucked. I have so much to say about this one, so get some snacks and buckle in. Although this video is focused on Becoming Part 1, I will talk about Part 2 where it's relevant. A plot summary. There's moments in your life that make you, that set the course of who you're going to be. We're in Galway, quite a while ago, and Angel, originally Liam, is a drunken loser. He spots Darla, looking super posh and damn fine, and he follows her. Why she picks this drunken loser to be her immortal companion is anyone's guess. Back to the present, and Jealous watches Buffy from the shadows because he's a creepy stalker. Giles knows lots of old stuff and is summoned to the Sunnydale Museum to look at an artifact. It's a giant rock with writing on it, and clearly something inside. No surprises, thank you. In a Shakespearean display with fish sticks, Xander reenacts Buffy's vamp battle from earlier. There is a chair shortage in the cafeteria. Back in ye olde times, Drew is in the confessional, all sweet and innocent, and Jealous is convincing her she's a devil child. In current times, the artifact is whispering to her. Spike read all about it in the paper, and Jealous seems to know what it is. Buffy has deja vu and finds the disc with Angelus's cure. Back in ye old times in some Romanian woods, and Angelus is racing through those woods towards an elderly Romani woman, chanting. He collapses to his knees as his eyes close, and his soul is restored. It hurts like a bitch. The Scoobies argue over what to do with the curse. Xander and Giles almost come to blows. Angelus and Drew break into the museum and steal the obelisk. Spike is unimpressed with the big rock. Kendra's back! Angelus starts his ritual to awaken a Cathla. Back in LA in 1996, Whistler shows Angel Buffy and he is obsessed immediately. He wants to help her. Angelus grasps the sword, trying to pull it out of Alfalfa, but he isn't worthy. He sends Buffy an immolationogram. He could have just texted, but Angelus is a drama queen. While Buffy goes to face Angelus, Drew and their minions attack the Scoobies. Xander is broken, Cordelia has fled, Willow is in a coma, Giles has been kidnapped, and Drew has killed Kendra. Realising the trap, Buffy runs as fast as she can back to the library, but she's too late. Seeing Kendra, she rushes to her side, but she's dead. The big moments are going to come. You can't help that. It's what you do afterwards that counts. That's when you find out who you are. You'll see what I mean. The cops show up to make a bad situation far worse. First off, I don't know why, but there are two versions of this episode. I'm currently watching these on Disney Plus, unless there's a commentary track for the episode. Then I'm watching it on my collected DVDs. But this episode started and I was confused because it had Whistler giving the initial voiceover. And I distinctly remember Liam, bad Irish accent and all, doing that voiceover. So to make sure I wasn't crazy, I put in my collector's DVD and sure enough it's Liam giving that voiceover. It is weird to hear Whistler deliver it because we haven't met him yet. And in terms of tone and delivery, I actually prefer Liam's version. Maybe just because I've seen it so many times that is the one I'm used to. You can see why they would have Whistler give the opening monologue, given that he gives the closing one. But to me it really doesn't play as well as the Liam monologue. This episode was written and directed by Joss Whedon. I said Passion was one of my favourite episodes of TV ever. And Becoming Parts 1 and 2 are right up there with it. Let's just get what's bad about this episode out of the way, so we can focus on everything that's amazing. First, David Boreanaz's Irish accent is awful. There is no redeeming it in any way. But he is still really good in those scenes, and the scenes themselves are great, especially the opening one. So although his accent is bad, it's never distracting. It doesn't pull me out of those scenes. Second is Cordelia saying about Snyder, because he's got a giant bug up his butt the size of an emu. It's emu, not emu, and that grates every time I hear it, because I'm Australian. The only other thing that is bad is the immolationogram. The vampire is not even in direct sunlight and bursts into flames almost immediately. When even small amounts of direct sunlight have never done that before, it stands out. Maybe that vamp was really young and super weak. Who knows? Speaking of the immolationogram, it raises the question of why a vampire would do that. Why would they give up their undead life? And I have a theory, and I think it plays into why Angelus would want a demon to suck Earth into a hell dimension, but I'll discuss that a little later. Now let's talk about what is brilliant in this episode, and honestly, it's absolutely everything else. I think Becoming Parts 1 and 2 are just about the best two-parter ever written on television. I said as much when discussing What's My Line Parts 1 and 2. Marty Noxon said then that two-parters usually end up with a lot of filler to stretch the story to two parts. But that's not the case here. Every scene is purposeful and has meaning, either thematically or within the narrative itself. But why I think this one is the best two-parter ever written is because both parts are outstanding by themselves. The flashbacks in part 1 tell their own separate story that still forms a cohesive part of the greater narrative across the two episodes. And while the theme of becoming is addressed in both episodes, each episode looks at that theme from a different perspective. It gives each episode its own narrative while still continuing the overall theme between the two episodes. From a storytelling perspective, the narrative across these episodes is phenomenal. The pacing, the stakes, the humour, the backstory, the twists, all of it told with some outstanding acting from the whole cast. Speaking of outstanding acting, this episode has one of my favourite full Scooby cast scenes in it, and that's their discussion and argument in the library about what to do with the curse. It's an emotionally heavy and realistic scene that allows for friends to disagree on something and act how real people would. I've talked about face acting a number of times, and this is a scene that, as much as the dialogue and physicality of the scene dictate the mood and tension, the face acting portrays so much emotion, pain, disappointment, disbelief, anger, and it's all acted so well, sometimes with just a look. This scene alone deserves an Emmy. Xander is particularly passionate in this scene, and much gets said in the fandom about whether he's right or not. I lean heavily on the he's wrong side. I've made it quite clear in my discussion of the Soul in Season 1 episodes The Harvest and Angel, and a couple of other episodes this season, that I draw an absolute line between the actions of Angelus and the actions of Angel. And I do not believe that Angel can be held responsible for the things Angelus has done. While I know some people don't think they can be separated, my interpretation of the law is based on the idea that they are. And no one flat out tells Xander that. Buffy says it's a little more complicated than Xander's explanation, but doesn't elaborate. What I like about this scene is that it rings true with the themes and metaphors that have been built this season, and the roles that the Scoobies play. Here you have Xander and Giles almost coming to blows over Jenny and Angel's role in her death, and it plays into their metaphorical roles perfectly. Xander, as Animus, Buffy's heart, feels guilt for her role in Angel losing his soul, and Jenny's subsequent death. Her heart is passionate and emotional, so it makes sense he would disregard that Angel is not responsible for what Angelus does, and so feels that Angelus should die regardless of if the spell can be done. Giles' sophist, her metaphorical mind, knows that rationally it is not her fault, and he said in innocence that he would not judge her. Her mind knows that Angelus and Angel are not the same, and knows that Angel has shown he loves Buffy and has done good and proven himself an ally on multiple occasions. It's telling here that with the mind and heart in conflict, Buffy's spiritist, Willow, asks her what she wants. Speaking of Willow, we see the start of Willow's magic awakening here and her hubris around it. In I Only Have Eyes for You, we saw the start of Willow using magic to fix her issues, and here we see the start of her general disregard for safety when magic is concerned. That will eventually lead to her magic addiction. Here, without any real reason, without any real practice, just through reading, she is convinced that she will be able to work a modern version of a spell lost to the Romani people that involves summoning a soul. Giles, who has experience in magic, says he can't do it, and he highlights the issue with Willow doing it.
Willow, channeling such potent magic through yourself, it could open a door that you may not be able to close.
And we will see in the next episode that is exactly what will happen. Willow will become a channel for the magic. She won't really be casting it herself. And in doing so, she does open a door that can't be closed. Spike gets some of my favourite lines in this episode, like, "Someone wasn't worthy." But I wanted to talk about a specific line in this episode. It's one of those lines that everybody likes because it's Spike at his sarcastic best. But like most things that Joss writes, I think it has a much deeper meaning. The line is,
"It's a big rock. I can't wait to tell my friends. They don't have a rock this big."
Now, Spike has said this after he was pacing around a room and quickly got back into his wheelchair to hide the fact that he is fine from Angelus and Drew. They have been treating him horribly, with Angelus being purposely cruel and Drew just basically not caring at all. He says, "I can't wait to tell my friends. They don't have a rock this big," when he is standing right next to his friends, who currently have the giant rock. I think it's quite clear that he is saying, "You are not my friends," without directly saying it. And of course he betrays them in the next episode. The final scene in this episode is an example of perfect storytelling. It's the midpoint of a two-parter, so it needs to give us the hook for the next episode. They provide us with something unexpected. Drusilla easily taking out Kendra, then ratchet up the stakes when they take Giles. Buffy has already said in passion that she can't do this without him, and now he's gone. We get Whistler's voiceover as Buffy, in slow motion, runs into the school, too late to save anyone. She sees Kendra and drops to her side, realising she is dead. Then, as if that wasn't enough, the stakes get raised even further. Buffy is found over Kendra's body by the police. Apart from the toll this takes on Buffy, it puts her in her darkest hour so far. It was one thing to face her own mortality at the end of season 1, but now, due to her actions in Surprise, everyone around her has had to face theirs. I mentioned the immolation-ogram and what may motivate a vampire to sacrifice themselves in such a manner. Much like you have suicide bombers motivated by religious purposes who believe they are going to heaven because of some twisted holy mission, I think the vampires who essentially kill themselves, either by immolation or by taking on the Slayer directly, believe they are going back to whatever hell dimension spawned the original demon that possesses them. When Buffy comes back in season 6 after dying at the end of season 5, she says she thinks she was in heaven. We see Glory in season 5 trying to get back to her hell dimension. She didn't want to be trapped on Earth either. Earth seems to be some kind of purgatory dimension to both demons and humans. In the fandom, it often gets asked, why would Angelus want to pull humanity into a hell dimension? What would he gain from that? I think the answer to that is that a hell dimension would essentially be heaven for demons. They could imagine not having to scurry about through sewers, not having to hide from the sun. Basically just demons living their best life, out in the open. The question is, what prompts Angelus to go through this change from obsessive, sociopathic bad guy to becoming an apocalypse-causing threat? And I think the answer lies in I Only Have Eyes for You. Angelus has never experienced love directly. Angel has. It was finding happiness in his love for Buffy that caused him to lose his soul. So Angelus has Angel's memories of it, but no direct experience of it. That changes in I Only Have Eyes for You. Angelus gets possessed by Grace, and the demon inside him is forced to feel love, and it causes Angelus suffering. Probably as much pain as Angel felt with a soul for the things that Angelus has done. And Angelus, being the overdramatic drama queen that he is, to deal with it chooses the nuclear approach, to pull everything into a hell dimension. There, like heaven for humans, he may know some kind of peace again. Becoming has played a large role in this season, as Buffy left behind her childhood and is becoming an adult. Characters moving through their journey, the choices they make and what they become as a result of those choices is at the heart of Joss Whedon's existential philosophy on life. In the last episode, we saw how people were becoming monsters by circumstance, and that serves as a primer for the theme in this episode. The episode opens in Ireland, with Liam finding Darla. She is reminiscent of the woman in the Watcher Diaries drawings about Angel that we saw in Halloween. She is beautiful and starkly out of place. Liam approaches her and she offers to show him the world and he accepts. Darla tells him to close your eyes. She vamps out, bites him, then cuts her breast and he feeds, meaning he will die and become a vampire. Angel, we will find throughout Buffy and Angel the series, is often subjected to the whims and controls of other people. In this circumstance, as I mentioned last episode, he didn't know what he was asking for when he asked her to show me your world. So, circumstance or destiny, Liam becomes Angelus, the vampire. The second flashback in England shows us Angelus tormenting a deeply religious girl gifted with visions. Having killed the priest in the confessional, Angelus hears her confession and tells her she's a devil child. Drusilla calls him father, thinking him the priest, but foreshadowing him siring her as a vampire. She doesn't mean to be wicked and cursed, she wants to be good, and Angelus tells her that God's plan for her is for her to be evil. He says,
"What can I do?"
Fulfill his plan, child. Be evil. Just give in.
No. I want to be good. I want to be
We all
pure.
do at first. World doesn't work that way.
This shows us how outside circumstances, in this case Angelus, turned Drew from a good religious girl into an evil and sadistic vampire. Our third flashback in Romania shows Angelus receiving his curse. Having killed a gypsy girl who looks a lot like Drusilla, the Kalderash elders curse him by giving him his soul back, to suffer in torment from the weight of what he has done as a vampire. It is here that we see what it is like when he receives his soul, a reference we'll need for next episode. So having received his soul, Angelus becomes Angel, the vampire with a soul. Our fourth flashback shows Angel stumbling around New York, hunting rats. Whistler prompts Angel to become something better, to have purpose and to make a difference. In doing so, he shows him Buffy. We see Buffy becoming a vampire slayer. We see initially she's a lot like Cordelia, her what-if version, and we see Merrick telling her she has a calling. We are shown her first kill, her shock, her tears. The loneliness and isolation that is already starting. Angel sees all this and wants to help her. All of these instances are things that happened to them and had them becoming something else through the circumstances thrust upon them. Darla made Liam a vampire with uninformed consent. Angelus drove Drusilla insane before turning her into a vampire. The Kalderash elders cursed Angelus with a soul. Buffy was chosen and had a destiny thrust upon her. The one that stands out here is the last one. Angel choosing to become someone after seeing Buffy. Even though it's a manipulated choice, it is the only active choice he makes, that any of them made. They each here have become something else through circumstances that have happened to them. And we are reminded that Angel losing his soul was something that was done to him. It was not an active choice he made. At the start of the episode, Liam, or Whistler, depending on which version you're watching, says,
Here's the thing. There's moments in your life that make you, that set the course of who you're gonna be. Sometimes they're little, subtle moments. Sometimes they're not. I'll show you what I mean.
And we've seen that these moments can be inflicted upon you, can be an unavoidable part of your destiny. And this raises the question of fate versus free will. How much of what happens to us is actually in our control? Do we all have a preordained path through life, or do we actually get to chart our own course? Angel, as a character over the course of his arc, has to constantly ask this question, as he is repeatedly having things happen to him that seem to be the result of outside influences, like his role in the Shanshu prophecy, and even next season him being returned from a hell dimension. An existential philosophy would suggest that it's irrelevant, that we are the sum of our choices regardless of whether the things that happen to us are a product of our own making, forced upon us through circumstance, or simply just the result of a universe that doesn't care. All that matters is the choices we make within the circumstances we find ourselves in. So the philosophical question becomes, how do you prepare for an indifferent universe? Buffy refers to her becoming the Slayer as her destiny. In Becoming Part 2, she says,
It's because you didn't have a strong father figure, isn't it?
It's just fate, Mom. I'm the Slayer. Accept it.
Yet Buffy has shown that even when put into situations where her choices suck, she still actively makes them. she still exerts control over what she can, even when that is limited. So how do you prepare for an indifferent universe? Whistler provides our answer.
Bottom line is, even if you see him coming, you're not ready for the big moments. No one asks for their life to change, not really, but it does.
In other words, you can't. You can't prepare for the unknowable moments. And even when they are knowable, you can't really prepare for the big things that absolutely rock your world, whether they are good or bad. They have too big an impact on your life to have been able to really prepare for how much it will affect you. For example, despite all the thematic warnings in the lead up to it, nothing could have prepared Buffy for her magical unicorn vampire with a soul boyfriend losing that soul and becoming an apocalyptic threat after they slept together. Random circumstances or even preordained ones are going to happen to us all. That is the only inevitability. And the lesson for Buffy here is to accept that. Circumstances out of your control will happen and will affect your life, maybe even changing your direction completely. And like any fight, you have to roll with the punches and just keep going. Becoming through circumstance was the theme of this episode, but in the next, that theme turns to the true heart of Joss's philosophy, becoming through choice. This is where we've been heading the whole season. The prominent theme of sex and coupling has built to this point. It really started in episode 3 with our introduction of Spike and Drew, because Spike is often mirrored with Buffy, and Drew represents Buffy's unbridled, sexual, sensual side. Sex has been used to represent an adult choice made by Buffy as a woman, not as the Slayer, a normal thing for a regular teenage girl to go through. It highlights that Buffy has her feet in both worlds, the supernatural world of the Slayer and the real world of the woman. Buffy lives in this world. She participates in it. She doesn't remove herself from the world the way Kendra was required to do so by her Watcher. I said way back in the first episodes that this whole series is about Buffy learning to reconcile the two, the woman and the Slayer. In the first season, it was about abandoning her childhood and accepting that she is becoming an adult. By making the hero's choice, the Slayer's choice, to face her destiny and possible death, she abandoned the comfort of childhood for the reality and responsibility of adulthood. In School Hard, Spike killed the Anointed One, that last vestige of the eternal child. It told us that Buffy is beyond that point, that there is no going back to the innocence of childhood. We are then introduced to Drusilla and Kendra, representations of Buffy's sexual side and virginal side. We are reminded that Buffy has been warned about remaining the virginal sacrifice in episodes like Inca Mummy Girl, and that should she have sex, there will be negative consequences. I haven't discussed this before, but I think it becomes extremely relevant now. Although Buffy has received all these warnings that she needs to remain the sacrificial virgin, and that bad things will happen if she doesn't, these things ignore one glaring reality. Buffy was already sacrificed. She has already died in pursuing her destiny. As I said in Prophecy Girl, she was saved by her friends, by the choices she made as a woman, by the choices that weren't tied to her destiny. The Slayer continued to exist because the woman exists. It is therefore understandable that this season was about embracing the woman, of having that aspect of her also mature, hence the focus on sex and coupling. So the first half of the season focused on that maturation, on her reaching the decision to and then having sex with Angel. The second half of the season has been about that most adult of things, dealing with the consequences of your actions. In What's My Line Part 1, Buffy's virginal side fights her to a stalemate. Her virginal side is still strong and in control. Up until this time, Drusilla, Buffy's sexual desire, has been weak. But the end of What's My Line Part 2 tells us exactly what is going to happen. Buffy's virginal side, having done her duty, leaves. Buffy's sexual side emerges from the wreck of the church, strong and in control. Sex and passion then become prominent themes, resulting in Angel losing his soul. Those themes hang heavy on this episode, with the references back to Surprise and the consequences that have arisen out of the events of that episode. Even the ritual itself, Angelus' first attempt, is a sexual metaphor. Angelus' blood flowing, is grasping his shaft and pulling hard. There's excitement and anticipation as light emanates from it. Drusilla smiles and is basking in it, but it fails. There is no climax. We get this.
Someone wasn't worthy.
Damn it! This is so disappointing.
It's a direct comparison to Buffy when Angelus brushed her off after they had had sex. Buffy thought she wasn't any good, that she had done something wrong. As Spike says here, she wasn't worthy. I've compared Spike, Angelus and Drusilla to the aspects of Buffy before. Spike here as the Dark Mind is amused by Angelus' failure, mocks him for being unworthy. Angelus as the Dark Heart doesn't understand. He thought he did everything right, and Drew as the Dark Spirit is disappointed. When Buffy suggests cursing Angelus again, Xander accuses Buffy of wanting to ignore everything that Angelus has done in order to get her boyfriend back. He believes she's not performing her duties as Buffy the Vampire Slayer and is letting the emotions of Buffy the Woman dictate. She says she'll kill him if she has to, but that Willow is the backup plan. A contentious issue in the fandom is whether Buffy should have gone to meet Angelus at all. Did she simply fall for another trap? Angelus goads her and says,
You never learn, do you? This wasn't about you. This was never about you. And you fall for it every single time!
referring to the events of when she was bad. But I think Buffy did the right thing with the information she had. Yes, she left to face Angelus, rightly saying that if she kept him busy, he couldn't perform the ritual. She had no idea that Angelus had tried to perform the ritual and failed. She had no idea that he needed Giles. As far as she was aware, he could complete the ritual at any moment while they were just sitting in the library. While it was obviously a trap or a distraction, Buffy left the Scoobies with a vampire slayer. It's not like she left them to fend for themselves. And they had a solid plan too. Curse Angelus again and give him back his soul. Armageddon averted. Angelus had no idea they were performing that spell, he just wanted Giles, and he never finds out. If he knew, he probably would have killed Willow too. Buffy goes out to confront Angelus while Willow attempts to cast a spell, but Angelus' minions, with Drew, attack the Scoobies. Buffy's only real mistake was not following through on her declaration, I'll kill him if I have to. If she'd killed him instead of running back to the Scoobies, Acathla would never have been awakened. And it's in that decision that Buffy was in conflict with herself, that she had to make a decision between the woman, of saving her friends, and the Slayer, of killing the vampire who was trying to cause Armageddon. In the first season she made the Slayer's choice. She knocked out Giles and went and faced the Master. This time she makes the woman's decision, and she runs off to save her friends instead of killing Angelus. She has been warned about this all season, that her life outside of being a Slayer would distract her from her calling. In Passion, Giles said,
But as the Slayer, you don't have the luxury of being a slave to your passions. You mustn't let Angel get to you, no matter how provocative his behavior may become.
And she lets him get to her here, by putting her friends in danger. A Slayer like Kendra would have continued fighting him. She would not have run back to her friends. She would have tried to end the threat there and then. In the meantime, Drew, Buffy's unfettered sexual desire, has confronted Kendra, Buffy's chaste virginal side. And the outcome was inevitable. Buffy gave in to her passion, effectively killing her chaste virginal side, as they cannot both exist. So it is no real surprise here that Drew renders Kendra completely ineffective and kills her easily. Buffy makes it back to the school only to discover that Kendra is dead. Her what-if version, Cordelia, has run. Xander, her heart, is broken. Willow, her spirit, is in a coma, and Giles, her mind, is unconscious and captured. In innocence, to face the judge, they were all together, supporting her, all aspects as one. Here, they are fractured. The consequences of Buffy giving in to her passion have now been fully realised. She is alone. In surprise, in her Slayer dream, Joyce asked her, "Are you ready?" In this episode, both Xander and Willow ask her if she's ready. As we discussed earlier, Whistler tells us flat out that no matter how prepared you are for life, no matter how far on your journey into adulthood you've travelled, that things will happen that no amount of preparedness could have made you ready for. So what do you do when those things happen? Whistler answers that too.
So what are we, helpless? Puppets? No. The big moments are gonna come, you can't help that. It's what you do afterwards that counts. That's when you find out who you are.
And once again, we are back to that existential philosophy of choice and consequences highlighted in Lie to Me, which will be the focus of the finale. When Darla turns Liam, she tells him to close your eyes. This will be echoed by Buffy next episode when she kills him. I've used pretty much all the best quotes in this episode already, so I'll go with this one.
You know, polite people call before they jump out of the bushes and attack you.
Just wanted to test your reflexes.
About testing my face punching, because I think you'll find it's improved.
Thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe to the channel and click the notification bell. It helps the channel a lot. You can also support the channel through Patreon. If you disagreed with anything I said or have anything to add, please put it in the comments below and I'll see you next video.